You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm here today with Marc Goldberg and Shailin Dhar of Method Media Intelligence. I wanted to first ask Shailin what the origin story is for Method Media Intelligence. And we'll start with that because there's usually some kind of a catalyst which drives the entrepreneur to start something new.
Yeah, the origin story is interesting. The problem that we're solving now, I actually played a part in kind of inadvertently helping create it many years ago. So Mark likes to phrase it as, I was one of the bad guys by accident. And it was the realization that, my time spent at an ad network, creating sites, running traffic through them, and taking about probably 8 months to realize that, this traffic can't be real, but exchanges are buying it, it's getting paid for, we're not getting flagged. But the real kind of awakening moment was going to ad tech conferences and then realizing that we weren't just a clever team that figured out a loophole, that there were thousands of people doing this, all with legitimate business entities, and realizing that it was a systemic problem, not just a exploit in specific places. Taking all of the learnings and starting to do research, publish that research, do consulting work and auditing work from that, getting supporters and allies like Mark behind that research, and just that, the type of doors that Mark was able to open to, more deeply understand how agencies work and how marketers operate, how budgets are allocated, how technology vendors are selected. That all fueled the creation of the company that we have today, MMI. And the research created a patent, and that patent served as the foundation for the product that we have in the market today.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah. I was just going to add, so my origin story with Shailin was some of the research. And so if you haven't read it, Kevin, I'll send it to you. It's called the Mystery Shopper Report. And this report, to me, was so eye-opening in that a lot of the vendors in the space were being reverse engineered. And most people didn't even know that at the time. And I think still don't know that. But Shailin went to great lengths to look at, how do I figure out some of the shortcomings of these other vendors and address them for my clients. And he started to think about a product that was really had the second mover advantage, is what I like to say. And he did a lot of stuff that ended up getting some funding. And at the time I was helping him from a distance. And then we decided, hey, it's time to join. And so I joined in 2020, January 1. Not sure if last year there's this thing called coronavirus that happened that kind of slowed everything down, but we're back on speed and we're really, hitting our stride now.
So, obviously I spend most of my time in search on the paid media side, and search was hit by IVT early and hard, right? And, obviously the party line from the engines were, don't worry, we're filtering it, we got this under control. And then eventually IVT at the impression and click level, hit the programmatic ecosystem pretty hard as well. But for the most part, what you hear from, in particular, the folks you're writing the check to is, we've got this under control. Sounds like from what you guys are saying, it's really not under control at this point.
No, it's not. But there's also a huge difference both in the environment as well as the detection methodologies that get applied to search versus an actual display or video creative. In search, typically you have you are in the client environment. So if you're the search engine, you have full awareness of the machine and the user that are interacting with your page. And then also the click event that results in that page view. You have as much time as that user is on the page to do analysis and collect data points for verification. In the display and video ad space, we're talking about auction and transaction times that range from 200 to, let's say, 800 milliseconds. There's no human behavior that gets exhibited in that amount of time to be able to analyze the same way. So it's definitely made a bigger impact in a negative way for programmatic ads than it has for search.
Yeah. And I also will say that, in search, a user is not going to click on your ad 17 times in a row. And so when you have that ability to see that you're not going back to that same page, and you can put that user IP address in a bucket that's suspicious, that sounds real, right? I would believe that if someone was clicking on my ad that I owned a pizza shop 17 times and it's the same person, that's suspicious. If I'm going to the New York Times and reading 70 pages because it's a Sunday or whatever, is that suspicious? And so you can't apply these apples to apples IP addresses to the same kind of story. And in search, it was a good story. It fixed a lot of the initial problems. Didn't solve everything, but it fixed it. And we have done some tests in search because we had the landing page product that we were able to see that these guys get hit hard. There's a lot of IVT, and I feel uncomfortable sharing everything, but I'm going to share something quickly. We saw with one of the big engines, 40% of their traffic was invalid, but when you looked at their user interface, you could do the math, and it was probably closer to 4 to 5%. With another big engine, their traffic was probably 6 or 7%, but when you look at their interface, it was less than 1.5, 2%. So they're doing some filtration. They're doing a good job. And I don't want to throw those engines under the bus, but there's still stuff left.
Yeah, the primary waste that we see in any PPC or even search environment is the lack of reconciliation between the number of clicks purchased and the number of landed page views.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've always known there's a delta, right? Because when they filter out the IVT at the engine, they give you the report of just what they're billing, right? And the discrepancy numbers you'd see between landing page clicks and billed clicks could vary dramatically, orders of magnitude different depending on the client and the industry sector and the keyword, et cetera, sometimes even positional data. So, we knew that there was a delta and that they were doing some fairly significant filtering. But of course, if you're only looking at your landing page logs or some JavaScript that triggers on a landing page, you don't know which of those clicks were billed and which of those clicks were unbilled, right? Exactly. All you know is in aggregate the data that you're looking at. So it always made it more challenging. And obviously another big difference in display was, the publisher and most of the bigger intermediaries got to see that user agent a lot of times, whereas a single advertiser only got to see them once, right? And so the richness of the data that the individual advertiser would see, regardless of what ad server they were using, was very different than the richness of data that would be seen at the publisher and at the exchange and SSP levels. So, it's sort of, everyone's got their own data set. Some data sets should make it a lot easier to identify IVT because you just have a much bigger data set. So, how has that sort of changed the way you guys are constructing your solution, right? Like you can obviously place things anywhere within the Lumascape, right? All the way from the publisher side, SSP side, exchange side, advertiser side. Like where are you guys sort of playing in the ecosystem?
We focus on places where we have actual client-side access. So, in terms of traffic measurement, most ad tech communication is server to server. If you think about a bid request being initiated from a web page or an app, that's essentially all server to server until it actually reaches the advertiser. So between the actual SSP initiating the auction, DSPs bidding on it, that whole process completing, and then the ad request being made to the ad server, that's all just a server talking to each other about characteristics self-declared characteristics of this impression opportunity. It's not until the ad is being ready to serve that you actually have access to the client-side environment. And you can think about this like any other auction, right? When you're bidding at an auction for a physical piece of something, whether it's an antique or a painting or industrial equipment, not everybody gets to go like touch it and feel it and like poke it and prod it until you've declared an intention to pay. And it's far more dangerous in a web environment where if you let every potential bidder inspect the client-side environment, you'd have huge security and privacy issues because you essentially are opening the gateway for hundreds of different undisclosed companies to basically come in and track what a user is doing as they're on a page or an app. So it's only once you're won the bid and won the auction with the highest bid that you actually get the ability to inspect that client-side environment. But too much traffic verification is done just in that server-to-server environment, and that's why a lot of it still continues to get through.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's the way the plumbing got built, right, is probably not the way we would build it if we were to build it today, but it's what we're
and the landscape of traffic has changed quite a bit, since the beginnings of ad tech to now. I don't know what the proportion of non-human traffic was, let's say when Bright Media was, being built in 2006, 2007. But now, as of 2021, we live in an internet age where half of internet events are non-human initiated. So it doesn't matter what type of measurement or what type of attribution you have, if verification is not at the foundation of that, you're going to have very, very big problems because you can now be connecting success events to non-human ad events, and that can just compound the bad decisions, especially with automation at scale, right? There's not a bunch of human intervention in that process.
So last year, you guys came out with the In Plain Sight report, and that had a bunch of fascinating data with regards to both the ubiquity of bot traffic, but also just how easy it was for even a non-technical person to spend some time on, a few semi-technical websites, the GitHubs and SourceForges and places like that, and cobble together a bot farm pretty easily. So do you feel like that since you released that report that there's been sort of a recognition from the industry, like, okay, this is really way too easy to do?
I wouldn't say from the industry, but there's definitely been some of the right people that reached out and took the, I think, appropriate learnings from that report.
Well, that's good to hear. More recently, you've got your rapid fire report, and sort of what was the hypothesis there that you went out to try to sort of dig into when you put that report together? What are the findings there?
I can start with the hypothesis, but Mark can talk about the impact of it better than I can. The hypothesis was just honestly to go in and investigate what was causing a lot of the suspicious data that we were seeing come through to the actual ad server. Because, ad transactions with completely empty device objects, completely empty content objects, actually making their way to us showed us that there had to be some issue with how this data was being passed. So we set out to, go not only speak with people that were operating in that space of generating these fake impression opportunities, but also confirming the actual logic and technology behind it. And the only hypothesis we went into it was, let's figure out what's happening. And once we figured that out, we saw a huge contrast between what the reality was and what had previously been reported in the press. And we really wanted to make sure that we deviated from this narrative of, the Chinese device and bot farms and the Russian hackers and all this like kind of, boogeyman, fear-inducing storyline, and really just talk about it as a counterfeit issue that has a bigger impact at scale.
OTT CTV is one of the biggest things right now for all advertisers, as well as the supply side. They're trying to figure it out and trying to secure as much inventory as they possibly can. And it's just been under this last, I would say 18 months where it's become even bigger because people have been more home and closer. But the exponential number that it's so as how big it is doesn't quite make sense. And I think that's kind of alerted us to, hey, there's something a little fishy over here. And we continue to do a lot of tests and research, and we dig into places that probably people don't know where to go, but some of this is truly in plain sight. And so you can see it on LinkedIn where people are trying to sell CTV traffic, and this CTV traffic is really efficient. Skype me for details. I mean, it's very clear that this is someone, if it isn't someone, that is really trying to game the system. And we dug into this, and I don't want to give you too many details because we're not trying to highlight this group that was doing wrong. What we were trying to do and highlight is it's the technique. In the Ad Exchanger article recently, it said $20 million. It's irrelevant how much money it is. It's your money is what the advertiser needs to know. And you know what? How easy it is. That's the bigger issue. And
that's $20 million from one operation.
Right.
And
right.
We know
many
at least 25 that we track on a regular basis, and that we have no confidence that we're tracking even close to the majority of them.
And even if we were tracking them, they have a name today, they'll have another name tomorrow, and they're going to continue to find the new next thing. I mean, so you saw this with in-apps, you saw this with OTT, you see this in different categories. The bad guys go where the money is. And right now, a lot of money is in OTT CTV. And the big thing is, you really have a hard time measuring it the correct way because a lot of the verification measurement firms can't do a lot of what needs to be done. One of the aha moments for me was, wait, this is an OTT buy. Why is our JavaScript rendering? Because your Samsung TV doesn't render JavaScript. Why is it rendering? Well, something's being passed that it shouldn't be passed. And that was kind of like, oh my God, this is really bad. So there are little things that we've been learning, and I would assume some of the other vendors are learning as well, that this space is challenged.
Yeah, and the one thing we've always focused on from the beginning is, our goal and the mission of the company is to become, through measurement, through proper objective measurement, a currency that our clients can use in terms of what they pay for and what they don't. So when we're moving towards becoming a currency and becoming that kind of validated metric that companies can bill off of, it forces us to also treat the problem like a counterfeit problem rather than a cybersecurity problem. And so that's what really helps us stay focused on, there's kind of a few basic components that we never stray from. One is we need to be able to measure or at least record every single event. Sampling cannot be allowed here. Otherwise, we lose the integrity of our measurement. The other is having deterministic classifications, because when you are acting on behalf of an advertiser, you oftentimes have to go get money back or facilitate clawbacks, credits, refunds for them from the platforms. You need a very clear data set to be able to do that. We're talking about programmatic ads where every event or every ad closes at a different price. So you can't just say, oh, we measured 5% IVT, so out of this $1 million campaign, just give us 50,000 of that. Because everyone has a different price, and the DSP or the ad platform is very rightfully going to say that we believe that the invalid impressions closed at a much lower CPM than your bid price. And so we think 50,000 is going to be too high. But if you can't go and say, hey, here are the unique auction IDs and their associated price, so we can calculate that refund down to like 1/100th of a penny, you're not going to get cooperation from the platforms. And it doesn't have to be this like enforcement, coming with a club exercise when you're reconciling invalid traffic. It should be a very cooperative thing where you can share data with the ad platform so that they know which parties in their supply chain have been contributing that.
So Kevin, you get that because from when Google, you knew what they knew what they knew, and they could do whatever they wanted to. They don't allow third parties, but in the programmatic ecosystem, there are third parties that do this, and those third parties don't always get the right identifiers. And we have focused on getting the right identifiers to map, so we know who should not get paid. You should not get paid. You should not get paid.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a log level trail, right, is a huge data set, right, and so, but it is necessary because other skeptics in the ecosystem will point to folks in your position and say, well, of course, it's in their best interest to over-identify fraud, right, because that makes them look better, right? It makes them look like, oh, we saved a lot more money for the advertiser.
It's a very easy thing to say. We've been dealing with that type of comment for years now.
Sure.
But if you think about a client interaction, if you tell them increasing amounts of invalid traffic on a monthly basis, eventually they're going to look at you as the verification vendor and say, why aren't you helping solve this?
You fix it, yeah.
So reporting a high number, sure, like in theory can work for the first month, maybe first 2 months, but that is not what facilitates a long, successful client relationship. So we have absolutely no interest in talking about, high IVT rates, because most of the value that we see with clients over time is not in, oh, here's the invalid traffic. It's in providing them clarity on what was purchased, how it was purchased, where did it get delivered. And to provide that measurement data, you need something that records 100% of events. And that's where our methodology comes into play, is our verification can be applied on 100% of events rather than a sample. So the long-term value is always in the measurement data.
Our position is really trying to improve and reduce your waste to then improve your outcomes. And that's really what we want our clients to start thinking more about.
Yeah, I mean, when people have said that to me, my response has been, that from the supply side, they don't want to get the reputation of selling watered down vodka, right? They actually want to sell top shelf vodka and get paid top shelf price for the top shelf vodka. And if there's something in their system that's watering down their vodka, they want to know about it. They should want to know about it. They should want to fix it, because in order to keep your yield high, right, you need to have quality product. And so,
in
that's how I look at it.
PPC, that's very true, in that you can see that success and you can measure that success very easily in PPC. In display, sometimes those KPIs are not there. And I think that's where the missing is.
You could think of PPC as kind of, you're serving that vodka by the shot, or, by a neat glass of vodka. Programmatic ends up kind of being a spectrum of cocktails to, like frat house jungle juice. And so how watered down the vodka isn't always clear. And that's what makes it tricky. But, it just always comes proper measurement, having receipts, and then, there's measurement can facilitate insights, and insights are what enable marketers to take the right action. But measurement without verification at the base of it ends up being meaningless in the long term.
So, what's your vision for your product roadmap on a go-forward basis? Are you getting feedback from both sides, from the advertiser and from sort of the exchange publisher SSP side as well?
Yeah, we do a lot of work with, most of our work with advertisers and agencies right now. There are certain environments like connected TV that you don't have client-side access, even when you're serving the ad. So we've actually created a exchange side implementation product that helps take care of that. Still, again, serving the advertiser's needs, but we end up touching almost every part of the supply chain.
The roadmap is Phil. I will say that we have a lot on our plate. We have a lot of things to get to world domination, but that's the goal. And so I would say, OTT CTV has been a very interesting place in the last couple of weeks as this report has come out, and now we're starting to see a lot of people ask some the right questions. And I think that's really what we're going to be able to do in the next couple of weeks, is answer some of these questions for some of these people, work collaboratively with some of the platforms. I think that's where this could be going, to solve for some of the OTT CTV stuff. But in general, our roadmap is exciting, and I think there's more to come. And what I would say to anyone listening, call me.
So actually an important question relating to that is sort of, obviously there's advertisers of all sizes, right? There's the ones with $100 million a month budgets in sort of programmatic video and display. And then there's ones with, $20,000 budgets in the same category. At what point does the sweet spot start to happen where the data sets are large enough and it's sort of absolutely worth making the call to you, Mark, or to one of your teammates and saying, hey, this, given my level of spend, this problem is probably of sufficient scale that I need to go fix it, right? And where does something enter your wheelhouse?
I've actually started at zero with people. I think it's good to understand all types of customers. There's going to be in the future in the roadmap a self-service option to address some of that. Right now we're holding hands with some small agencies and some small clients, and to your point, it's very low budgets, but these guys have done it in a way that it's very hands-off. The agency we have a good relationship with, they understand how our tag system works. Our tag is a very easy tag. It's not wrapping, it's not cumbersome, it doesn't require a lot of labor and effort. So it's very easy for them, which they're always smaller, so they can't afford to have these big back and forths. As well as some of our implementations allow them a very seamless way to mitigate some of the waste. And that reduces their, how do I say this? The friction in a lot of this, the make good world and the reconciliation. This is very seamless implementation we've done that allows them to redeploy all their impressions into real revenue. And I'm talking about like $65 was saved 1 month, which was redeployed into 20,000, 30 impressions. Like, it's that little of a number, but that is meaningful to someone. And I think it's the outcome was so meaningful that they continue to work with us. So we do have these small ones, and then we have these very large corporations that we deal with as well. I talk to everybody, and until we can get a self-service, I will always talk to someone. So we will eventually get where we need to be in that regard, but it's a problem for everyone. And I don't want to say, I want to be very careful. Ad fraud is never going to go away. There's always going to be someone doing something to someone. Madison Avenue has done a great job of trying to address this for some of their clients. They're not using us everywhere, so not an amazing job, but a good job. Those guys are taking a lot of it off the table and using some of these vendors. What's left is a lot of the smaller guys that are getting taken advantage of. And if all of us can kind of start working on the problem, it will be harder to do ad fraud.
I think there's a little bit of a nuance I want to add to Mark's comment about the big ones is oftentimes, unfortunately, there's some organizations that look at verification as kind of a nuisance cost. And so they find ways to reduce the cost of it. And typically that ends up working out in the form of sample implementation or the actual sampling rate of the technology being brought down so that there's just less events being processed. And it's essentially like if you had a home security system and you said, I'd really like to get this down from $150 a month to $120 a month. So we're just going to turn it off every other hour. And with any sort of system that's designed for protection, having it not always on is a mistake.
Yeah, having the front door monitored but the back door not a good strategy.
I mean, have the bad actors shifted most of their energy into the video marketplace because the yield is much higher, or is it just as bad in the display side and they just sort of doubled down into video as well?
With the ease of operation, it's just an add-on for them. You know, there's no reason to stop making the display money just because there's video money.
Right.
You just start making video money on top.
Do you anticipate they'll find a way to start to create invalid audio ads as well? I mean, I'm trying to think how that
it's
would.
already happening.
Okay.
This is not that's not like a secret that only MMI knows about. Like, you can go on and buy Spotify streams and buy SoundCloud streams, and all of this has the ability to be automated. I'm sure each of those platforms has filtering processes for just kind of bad, poorly engineered bots, but this is affecting audio. I mean, there's musical artists, there's rappers that have talked about how other artists are buying their streams and pumping up their numbers. And this is not a new thing. Anything that humans can do on the web, because it's a digital environment, bots can do far more efficiently without the overhead cost.
I hadn't thought about the value of the inflated listener number, right? That ends up being huge, just in the same way that an unusually high ComScore Nielsen number on a site would interest the media buyers. So
and you saw the in plain sight report, right? We talk about all the different platforms, and it behooves some of these influencers to get their numbers higher, so they do that, and then they buy more clicks. I mean, there's movies about this with Nick Bilton. It's on Netflix, I believe. I can't remember the name right now, but it's very common that there's a lot of invalid activity. Yeah. And Shailin pointed to it. Almost 50% of the web now is non-human. And if you think about that, that goes from your friends at Google with the Google bot, which is not malicious at all. But then there are some other ones that start to become a little bit more malicious. And then you go down the road where there's some sites are just scraping for emails or whatever it is. All of a sudden, 50%. Some of it is designed to
I think that's probably one of the big misconceptions that we see widely across the board, is that the internet existed and then bots came along to create trouble for advertisers. There was never an internet without non-human activity. Google's entire basis is a crawler. That's not a human crawler. That's an automated crawler that indexes pages and indexes content so that we can find exactly what we need when we go searching for it. So bots are I really hope that over the next year or two, we can get to a point where people stop having a negative reaction when they hear the word bot. Bots are going to exist. Non-human traffic is going to exist. What we're trying to do is make sure you're not paying to show ads to non-human browsers or devices.
So I just want to make sure you said Google's crawler is not a human, because I think everyone thought it was Kevin. I think everyone.
Larry and Sergey were going.
I thought it was Kevin, actually. I thought Kevin was very involved.
Hey, back in early 2000, we had our own search engine. We had written our own bot, right? And I don't remember what user agent we used, right? I don't remember whether we self-identified. I think we created a new user agent because we wanted to be polite. It was on the domain savvy.com, which I've since sold. But we actually wanted people to know who were looking at the log files that it was us, because we were essentially building a brand through the log files to some extent.
And that's why there's some defined user agents that everyone knows, like, hey, it shouldn't serve an ad. And sometimes that works.
Right.
But then there's other ones that don't define themselves, and not maliciously. They just don't. They don't even know to be polite about it. And that causes problems.
There's a huge gap between the developer teams that create these tools and the teams that get impacted negatively by them. So, that in plain sight report, the kind of main thing was headless Chrome was not developed for ad fraud. It was developed for automation and testing, and so that people could more easily develop the next greatest app and create the best user experience on a website. Because what better way to test your website than essentially simulating 50 million visits to see what could cause a break and negatively impact any user experience. Developers also have a tendency and a very generous kind of trend of open sourcing everything, because if this is a utility, then it should be open source. When it's open source, it can also end up in the hands of people that don't have great intentions. And that's what we were really referring to with in plain sight. Is it's not that these bot tools were created in some hacker forum in a basement, and everybody's wearing hoodies and there's matrix screens behind it. It's all out in the open on a Chromium forum.
Yeah, I mean, back when when we needed bots, most of them were university projects, right? That we were able to get the code for and decide which of them we wanted to use. And Python didn't exist yet, so that wasn't, it wasn't running on Python. But a lot of these, were university research projects because they needed to research the data, crawl it, and parse it. And we were like, oh, we could also do that. So it's hard to know what percentage is malicious, but at this point, the sheer volume of it makes you sort of feel like, okay, a lot of it is probably.
For advertising, there's no difference between a malicious bot and a non-malicious bot.
Yeah, and that's our point, is the maliciousness is one thing, but at the end of the day, an advertiser should not be paying for something that cannot render graphics, because the graphic on the website, that banner that's what the advertiser wants you to see. So if you can't render graphics, why are you paying for this ad?
Right. And that's a pretty easy threshold to meet.
Yep.
Right. Could and did the graphic load, and was there a human behind it?
It's should be the baseline, but ad tech is very much still has some muscle memory of wanting to do everything pre-bid, like it's all preventative. But again, in that pre-bid environment, you don't have access to the actual device or client environment, so you end up only being able to filter on things like IP address or user agent or app name, which doesn't give you that full coverage. Right.
And as far as what you provide to the upstream, to the SSPs and any other upstream provider, are they sort of asking for additional levels of granularity beyond what you're providing now, because they want to be able to go after the publisher and or the app, the entity, where the bot traffic was occurring, or are they sort of comfortable with the level of granularity that you provide?
I mean, we give them enough granularity that they can go back and have that tough conversation. We don't really get involved in that conversation unless we are brought in for whatever reason. But our job is for our side, the buy side. We are very collaborative with all the SSPs and want to be. We don't want to have a bad relationship with anyone. We want to just be able to provide the truth in an objective way. And so, we have seen some of the SSPs, especially with the CTV OTT report, come to us and try to figure out how to be more collaborative.
Well, on a final note, I think, it's in everybody's best interest to make sure we get high quality vodka and drinks. And so on that note, any closing comments with regards to sort of, any case studies or situations where you were really proud of whatever the few dollars that you gave back to that advertiser? Any other really interesting stories?
I like to say that I can tell a good story because we do have a good story. However, I'd rather show you. And so I've been offering free tests. So anyone who knows Kevin Lee and is watching this far along, I think we're like minute, 900? I don't even know. But if anyone's interested in getting a free test, reach out to me, Marc Goldberg, marc@methodmi.com. I will also send you the rapid fire report if you want.
MARC.
What'd I say?
You just said Mark.
Oh, okay.
Sure, they're not emailing.
Like, did I spell my name wrong again? No, I've never. So yeah, marc@methodmi.com. I'm on LinkedIn, very visible there, hopefully. And a free test. Love to tell you more about it. And if you know Kevin Lee, then I'll be nice to you.
Great. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.